We meet Stockton's new Executive Vice President and Chief of Staff, Dr. Teresita Sass. We discuss how the university is moving forward with plans to become a Hispanic-serving institution. It's all here on the next Latino Motion. Join us.
Choose to get lost in the woods to gain experience in forest management.
Choose to travel through time to understand the past.
Choose to soar to pursue a career in dance.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation, and Stockton University. This edition of Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is brought to you by the HD Studios at the campus of Stockton University.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare. For more information, call 1-888-569-1000 or visit atlanticare.org. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.
Welcome to Latino Motion, a weekly interview show highlighting issues impacting New Jersey's Latino community while advancing understanding of Latino cultural heritage and contributions to our society. And here is your host, Bert Lopez.
Buenos dias and welcome to Latino Motion. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Teresita Sass. She's the Executive Vice President and Chief of Staff for Stockton University. And Dr. Sass, it's such an honor to have you here on the show. I had an opportunity to meet you when we were doing the Hispanic Association Noche en Blanco event. And I'm sure you had a great time, but you had this opportunity to soak it all in arriving here in South Jersey. Tell me about your impression about the area here in South Jersey.
Thank you for having me on the show. It was my pleasure. That was one of the first events that I had during the first 2 weeks of joining Stockton University. I am coming from Virginia, and this is very different. I have to say that the only experience I've had with New Jersey before coming here was driving on the turnpike and then going up towards Connecticut. But I have found this to be a very interesting area. People talk about the North and the people are, not as friendly. I have not found that. I have found this to be a very open community, very friendly. I've been just embraced by just about everybody that I've met, and I had the opportunity to meet so many of the individuals in your organization at that all-white party. So that was actually wonderful, and many of them have reached out to me since. So I feel really good about the relationships and getting grounded here in the community. That's what we have to do.
Well, I'm so happy that they all of us open up the welcoming mat here. And we're a little different here in South Jersey than we are up in North Jersey. One of the things I want to ask you is, obviously coming from Virginia down here, what inspired you to make the move? You've been in education for well over 30 years, and here you are making a shift, coming to South Jersey. Tell me what motivated you.
Well, I had worked with President Joe when I was at Southern Connecticut State University. And then I left to go back to Virginia 4 years ago. And he reached back out to me because he was coming to this area. And he had read and he knew, applying to be the president. So he knew a lot about the area and what the institution was trying to do, particularly in Atlantic City. And he knew that that was part of my heartbeat. Working in urban institutions, addressing some of the issues, the challenges, and being a positive influence on the community, that's what I'm about. So he used that as a carrot. He talked a lot about Atlantic City, and then I looked online and I saw there were a lot of trees, and I said, are you taking me to the woods? And so I came, I visited, and I read so many things about what the institution was really committed to, and that really excited me. So I decided to go ahead and retire from Virginia and relocate and start a brand new career in a new community, there's a charge with just being reignited with something new and different.
Exactly.
And I think I can do some really good work here.
I want to talk a little bit about the heartbeat, in terms of, you mentioned the urban institutions, obviously. So you are inspired and grounded around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tell me a little bit about your history with the other institutions and how you have made a difference.
Wonderful. I will start with Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia. It's a historically black college and university right in the urban center. So we served a lot of BIPOC students, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so I learned that I cut my teeth on that, and I have been committed to that. I got the bug, and I've been committed to it ever since. I actually did my master's degree in urban education. I wanted to know more about the urban plight and how we could be a positive force. And then when I left Norfolk State, I went to Southern Connecticut State, and it's right around the corner from Yale. And you can just drive through and see the difference from Yale, then there's poverty, and then there's Southern. And so just the landscape of who we had the opportunity to actually impact and what we needed to do, particularly in our schools, in our elementary, middle, and high schools. So that was another thing that was very important to me, not to just wait until they got to college. How could we make sure that they knew that this was something that they could aspire to? And what was the benefit? Well, why go? How much does it cost, et cetera? And so that led me to Southern and then back down to Virginia after 4 years for something related to family, which is resolved. And so all of that is good. But that's when I worked with community colleges, and I saw students who were at very different levels, but I wanted them to get that 2-year degree so they could get that 4-year degree, because that's where the economic benefits really start to kick in for many of our students. So that's my heartbeat and my passion, is to work with students no matter how they come. What do we need to do to get them to where they want to go? And sometimes they don't even know where they want to go. Our job is to help them find their way.
To help our audience understand a little more about you, new to the area, coming to a great institution such as Stockton University. Tell me a little bit about your background and where you grew up.
So I'm originally from South Carolina. My 96-year-old grandmother and my mother still reside there, and many of my family members.
My daughter lives in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay, well, my husband is from right around there. We'll have to have a conversation about that another day. But grew up in Columbia, also lived in Chicago. And in Chicago is where I had my most immersion experience with all different cultures of people from all around the world. And I just fell in love with people. No hue, no culture, no language barriers, just immersion. And I love that experience. And by my affiliation with the Boys and Girls Club in Chicago, that's where I learned to understand and respect people and ask a lot of good questions. And that, I think, really spurred my interest in just wanting to be around people, learning people. I'm a people watcher and a people learner. And then if you listen to people and you learn to respect their cultures and their differences and see their humanity.
And I could see, and talking to you previously, that you have a passion for community. And why is it important for an educator, particularly an executive like yourself, to be also grounded with the community?
That was one of the things that actually grounded me in coming here, because it's part of who I am. And when President Joe talks about being in and of the community, that was something that he knows that is something important to me. So when we talk about my attachment to the community, it's coming from my childhood. It's something that my parents just put in me. Whether it's going to church or being at the Boys and Girls Club, you have an obligation to do more than just take up space on the planet. So you have an obligation to give back and to help those who are in your community. Perhaps they don't have a voice or they don't have the resources. What's your responsibility? What are you going to do other than complain? And so I've been like that since I can remember, and my parents would tell you the same thing.
You know, I started off ground floor at Atlanta City Electric, so to speak, here, and I got very involved in the community. And I tell you, that was a classroom in itself, right? You learn so much joining the United Way and behavioral health boards. It just you learn a little bit about leadership. You learn a little bit about how organizations. I always encourage people to get involved in the community, and you see that that's very important as well.
Yeah, and then you said United Way. I was a loaned executive for United Way. Going out and raising money, and I exceeded my goals because I had a personal experience to be able to talk about what community involvement did for me. And the Boys and Girls Club for me, with parents working and whatnot, it was a safe haven, and I learned so much about leadership through the Boys and Girls Clubs, and just an obligation to make sure that you pay it forward.
Right, and I wish more people understood that what you get out of it in terms of serving in the community and serving in those type of roles. We're going to take a quick break. We want to talk a little bit about how Stockton is becoming a Hispanic serving institution. We'll be right back, right after these messages. Welcome back to Latino Motion. We continue our discussion with Dr. Teresita Sass. She is the Executive Vice President and Chief of Staff at Stockton University. And Dr. Sass, we were talking about how great it is to be involved in the community as an educator. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is the institution, Stockton University, as a Hispanic serving institution. Are we there yet?
We're not there yet, but we're definitely on our way. During the last 10 years, the institution has almost doubled its Hispanic students. So that's a significant gain. A lot of that has been the work of 5 individuals in the admissions office, working with Latino students, working with their families, translating material so that their parents understand things and how to navigate things like financial aid, and completing the FAFSA, lots of workshops, and going out into the community. So that doubling in the last 10 years has moved us up to 19% of our student body is.
That is amazing.
That is amazing. So that work is continuing because we need to be at 25% to reach an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution. So that is front and center as one of our goals, because we're looking at our community demographics, and in order for us to be in and of the community, we need to make sure that we're reflective of students who also live here. So that's very intentional work that's being done by Bob Heinrich and his team.
Yeah, and I want to thank Stockton for being so engaged. You mentioned about the importance of being engaged in the community, being grounded in the community, and I know that Stockton has certainly opened its doors to Latino Motion. You helped sponsor many events in the community, such as the Latino Festival and the En Blanco event that you were a participant at. So it really is getting engaged in all segments of the community, which is wonderful. Well, what other steps do you think are going to be necessary for Stockton to continue to reach that milestone of becoming a Hispanic serving institution?
Well, we have to do more community engagement, but one of the things that we're going to be focused on, particularly in the next couple of years, is making sure we keep the students that we have. That retention component is very important. What are the barriers that those students are facing, and are we actually providing the resources that they need to stay in school? So we want the end goal to be graduation and employment. It's not just enough to get them in the door, but we've got to retain them, and we've got to make sure that they have good opportunities when they leave us, and that's where we're going to work.
That's a very important point, and I know that particularly community college struggle with the retention, and I know that all universities, but it's a bigger problem within the Latino community. Mm-hmm. What do you think are some of the fixes and how maybe the university and community could help in that regard?
So one of the things that I'm really excited about is what the institution has done. Previous leadership established the Multicultural Center, and students need a place. They need their own place and space so that they can be with those who understand them, but also to learn about other cultures. And so the Multicultural Center culture was designed for that, and that's a hub or a magnet, if you will, for our students, and we see that as a retention strategy. We have some specific funding available that we're using for outreach to make sure that we can close those gaps for students. What we see a lot is in that first year, there's a lot of people who want to support them, but then there's year 2 and year 3 and year 4, and the excitement starts to wane. So we have to make sure that we're encouraging the students. And then we've got several mentoring programs that are specific. One is for our young ladies, and then one for our male students, so that they have mentors who understand, appreciate, and embrace their culture. We're not trying to change people, we're trying to develop whole citizens. And come in, embrace your culture, bring your culture, but you need mentors that allow you to be okay, and that comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. And so those are some key elements. And then I'll say the last thing is disaggregating our data, making sure that everybody is moving up, that it's not buried. And you see these really good numbers, but if we disaggregate that data, what does it look like for our Hispanic students? What does it look like for a Hispanic male versus a Hispanic female? Different strategies, so that we can be very intentional about how we retain our students.
And I'm glad you mentioned that first year, because I seen students all gung-ho first year, and then you ask how they're making out towards the end of the year, and a little bit down, maybe because they didn't expect the work to be as hard. Maybe they weren't as well rooted to begin their college career. And I know this speaks to a bigger issue, right, in terms of preparing our kids for college, but also in the Latino community, there also are barriers in terms of single-parent households, et cetera. Anything that the institution is doing to help support those type of students?
I would say that one of the wonderful things that we did in the last 2 years is we have the Atlantic City EOF program. EOF is sponsored by the state, but we were able to identify even more students. So when you bring students who may have financial challenges coming from single parent households, or even two parents that are working 4 jobs between them, how do we get those students interested in higher education, and how do we keep them? So that summer program, with them coming in into that EOF, those students tend to even outperform the students who didn't go through the EOF program, because they have a sense of community. They know that people care about them, and there's a high level of accountability. And so offering those opportunities to more students to come and start in the summer so they can get grounded before everyone else comes back boosts their confidence, they get the skills that they need, and they succeed. And so we need to expand those programs, and we have a large percentage, about 50% of those students are Latino students.
Yeah, and you mentioned mentors, very important, particularly for a youth who probably doesn't have a college graduate in their household, who perhaps hasn't had a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer in their household. To have another Latino, another person that they could look up to, that's very important.
Very important. And to have those mentors, some of them are peer mentors, who are students who are juniors or seniors who can actually help them, and then our faculty and our staff. They're very engaged to want to make sure that these students succeed. And so what we have to do is we have to continually look and make sure that we're bringing in diverse faculty and staff so that they can see them in action and expose them outside of Stockton to faculty, staff, yourself, when they see you and they're just like, you've ascended to this place and this space. So how do we make sure that we get more business partners and others out in the community who can help us so that they can see what it can be?
Of course, one of the biggest issues for the middle class is affordability of a university. How is Stockton making that a little easier?
Okay, so we've got several programs. We've got the Garden State Guarantee. We have some specific dollars for first-generation college students. There's several places. What happens is when we sit down with our families and we find out what their needs are, our team goes back and says, how can we make this happen? what are the needs and how can we get this student in school and keep them in school. And so there's lots of different pockets of money and philanthropy. We're just coming off of our Ospreys Give campaign, and our highest amount is for scholarships. And so how do we do that?
Talk a little bit more about that as one of the barriers, and among some other things when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion. Welcome back to Latino Motion. We're back with Dr. Teresita Sass. She is the Executive Vice President and Chief of Staff for Stockton University. And Dr. Sass, we were talking about some of the barriers particularly for Latino kids, but this is for all minority kids. And one of them was, financing and being able to get affordability. But I want to talk more about globally issues for minorities, and that's one of them. And I know you were expanding on the fact if someone wants to go to college, is there funding available for them to go to college?
And yes, and it depends. And so one of the things that I will tell students, and we talk to middle schoolers about why it's so important for them to do well so that they can get scholarships. Root word, scholar. So there is a lot of need-based aid available, Pell Grants and whatnot. Someone might have to live at home for a while and, commute if they're from the area. But there are resources, and we're going to do our best to help support a student. If they really want to go to college, we want to make sure that they have the resources to do so.
Now let's talk a little bit about the changing scene, if you will, for universities. We had COVID. I know my son was going to Rutgers University when COVID hit. All of a sudden, he's studying from home. Now he has a job working from home, online job. And it seems to be like a major thing right now with a lot of institutions giving that flexibility. Personally, I like being involved in school. I thought that was a totally different experience, and it really opens up a lot more of environment, a lot more learning. But tell me your take on those changes that are taking place.
So I would say that COVID accelerated some change for all of us. Higher education is one of the last bastions to actually change. We've held on to a traditional model, but the market, people who need higher education, is telling us something different. So this was an accelerated, albeit devastating, that has helped us rethink education and meet students where they are. So everyone doesn't want to be in the classroom, and not everyone wants to be online. One of the things with Stockton is that we have those options for both. Okay. So that's another way to meet students where they are. We have a lot of students who are hybrid. So they do some of their classwork online and some of their work in person. For many of our students that have come through COVID, they've gotten a little bit used to that, but others, they need the interaction, they need the socialization. So we've got the best of both worlds. The other thing I think is important for people to know is that Stockton is not just about that 18-year-old. So we have a large contingency of adult learners where this is the only way they can go back to school is online. They have families, jobs, those types of things. And with us having programs in the liberal arts, programs in business, programs in healthcare and nursing and all of those areas, we have to have that flexibility because we have to serve our community. And that's what our community is asking for, options.
I know when I was going for my degree, taking classes here at Stockton, I had such a hard time trying to get credits that I needed at night because they were only available during the day and I couldn't come. So I had to wait maybe a couple semesters to take that class that I needed that may be offered. And are you seeing that there's a little more flexibility taking into account those type of students?
We're in process. We're 100+ days out, so I haven't delved into that data that deeply yet. But we know that those are things that higher education leaders are looking at across the country. And we also know that our board is aware of, let's make sure that we remain relevant, and we can do that and still stay true to who Stockton is. There's some uniquenesses about the institution that other institutions just do not have. And so we don't want to lose our distinctiveness in trying to be like everyone else.
Now, I know that some high schools have some programs that they could take at high school to earn credits. And I know that for some students, it's better to go to a community college and then go to the four-year institution. Tell me about your take in terms of those two approaches.
Okay, so different pathways for different students. All students do not have the opportunity to go through a dual enrollment program. It's dual credit, and they get that credit and it transfers directly. They can take off as much as a year of their four-year education by taking that dual enrollment at their high schools, but not all students have that or are aware of it early enough. So we also have the community college option, and we've got great partnerships with community colleges all across the state. We just signed a 3+1 agreement with Atlantic Cape. You do 3 years at Atlantic Cape, 2 years with your associates, another year at the Atlantic Cape price. And then you take your final year at Stockton. So again, this is our response to what does our community need, and then what can we do. For the dual enrollment, it's a great accelerator, particularly for a student who's really focused. They know that they're going to go to college, and we have a very high percentage of those students who go through our dual enrollment credit program who actually end up being Stockton students and graduates.
So tell me a little bit more about some of the other obstacles. There's so many avenues in terms of pathways to get a college education, and I know that I did it the hard way, working and going to school, earning my associates, and then my bachelor's, and even through Stockton, Thomas Edison, and ACCC. So the options are available even back then. But what are some of the obstacles? What's preventing a lot of our minority students from going to get a higher education?
So I'll speak globally. I'm not exactly sure about in this region, not yet. So one of the things that we know globally is that we have to get into the high schools and the middle schools earlier so that the students understand these are opportunities right before them. The other thing that we find is a lot of times minority students do not believe the benefit. They have not seen it. They don't know it. It's like it's vapory to them. So how can we get them to see what the benefits are? Showing them the data, showing them persons like yourself, like myself, that it's an option for them, but also helping to walk them through the process. It's not just going and showing up for a fair. It is being on those campuses, working with those students, and making sure that we're connecting with their parents so that their parents understand why this is important. This is not an area where you can only have a select few, the people that all the guidance counselors know that are going to go to school and whatnot. How do we make more opportunities for them? And that's our immersion into the schools.
Yeah, well said. Let's shift gears just a little bit and going back to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You mentioned how we're reaching that Hispanic serving institution. How is the university doing in terms of diversity within the staff and certainly the professors?
So for our Hispanic, we have about 9% of our faculty and staff are Hispanic. So that's lower than our students right now, 19%. One of the things that we have done, we have search advocates. We make sure that we are advertising in lots of places to get the word out where all of these individuals are and where they'll be looking, and then creating an inclusive environment. Again, it's the same thing that we talked about with retaining students. We want to make sure that we've got an inclusive environment, that we've got mentors and people who are going to help them navigate once they come.
Very, very important, certainly. So you're saying you're recruiting, which is important. So if someone is interested in applying for positions, where should they look?
On our online. And so if you go to Stockton and you go to our job site, you will see all of the open positions at Stockton, but we're not just passively waiting for people to go online. We're actively recruiting and going into those places. And so when you see, or if someone says, what's going on at Stockton, then you send those resumes to HR.
So we got the final second here. Tell me in one word what your vision is for the future here.
One word?
One word, a phrase, go ahead.
A phrase. Stockton is here for you.
Perfect. With Dr. Sass, that's a perfect answer. Thank you so very much for being here on Latino Motion, and thank you for joining us once again here on Latino Motion.
Choose to get your feet wet, to learn more about protecting our environment.
Choose to read minds, to understand the human brain.
Choose to get your hands dirty, to create a masterpiece.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare. For more information, call 1-888-569-1000 or visit atlanticare.org. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.